Hey friends, Peggy Hall back with you from thehealthyamerican.org. This is a live stream where we are going to dig into some very strange things that are happening in Ohio. I have been reading all of your comments, and I really appreciate you not only subscribing to the channel, but also leaving your comments, not only in the live stream, but later in the comment section so that everybody can see those. I'm going to be sharing some of your comments. You brought up some really great points. And then there is a whole series of things here. Plenty of things that just don't add up for me, and I'm going to share them with you this evening. We've got a lot to dive into, and the first thing I want to do is to thank the sponsor of this video. So we're going to hop on over to Keto Elevate. In fact, the website, if you would like to go to it, let me show it to you. It is ketowithpeggy.com, and I've been telling you about this product. This is a product that I use in my daily nutritional plan. And I want to read to you a message all about it so that you can benefit from this as well. So do you feel like you are losing the battle against the dreaded holiday weight? Even though it's February, you can still know that 52% of other Americans are with you. Over half of Americans say that they are trying to lose weight this new year. And one of the best ways to help fight the battle against the dreaded holiday weight is with this amazing keto powder. Again, it's over at ketowithpeggy.com. It helps promote elevated levels of ketones, and it can help you take control of your cravings and your appetite while supporting your own weight management goals at the very source. And you just need to use 1 scoop a day. I just heard from a lovely healthy American who said that she's putting it in her morning coffee. So you can help fight the dreaded holiday weight, and you can get up to 51% off of your order. And you are also going to get several free bonuses, including VIP health coaching for life, and get that before their half off sale ends soon. Again, ketowithpeggy.com. You can also click in the description box, let that expand, and there will be a link for you at the end of the video. And the best part is that you have 60 days to make up your mind. And if you're not satisfied, there is a money back guarantee. So I hope that you will order now. And I wanted to also mention that since we're going to be talking about Ohio, and we're going to be talking, let me just start from the beginning. I've done several videos on Ohio and on what people are reporting. I have been looking at the footage again and again. I've been watching these interviews with the victims again and again. And I've noticed that after the dust settles, to use a metaphor, in other words, after the emotions settle down and the shock and the awe and the adrenaline and the cortisol, after all of that subsides, and then you go back and watch the videos again, you start to catch things that you may not have seen the first time. So I've done several videos on this topic already. I will have links for you below. And the last video I did, which was yesterday, the question was, why are they pushing this narrative in Ohio? And the basic part of that video, previous videos, I talked about the white noise movie. I'm going to summarize all of that for you here. The Intel chips, the land grab, all that kind of stuff. But what I'm seeing again and again, and what truly bothers me, is this push for the federal government, massive federal government intervention. Now, many of you made very good points that this might indeed be a federal issue, because if there exists a toxic cloud, like the pictures that were shown, and you know that you can believe every picture that you are shown, when you see these images and it says that these clouds are going to be floating over Pennsylvania, so immediately now that is from state to state, and that does trigger this aspect of it being a federal case. When we were kids, we used to say that expression, don't make a federal case out of it. And now I know exactly what that means, because do you really want the government involved? Many people are pushing for huge government intervention. They want the EPA there. And I understand those arguments. But what troubles me is that it seems like that narrative is being pushed before the other options are looked at. So let's just start with that. Number one, this is the railroad's responsibility. They are responsible, just as if you hit somebody in your car, you're responsible. The car manufacturer is not responsible for it. The federal government's not responsible for it. You are responsible for it. So the railroad is responsible for the cleanup, for the damage, and all of that. Now, I did see some headlines today, and there were different numbers that were floated around. In fact, it said, let me see if I've got that up for you here. Yeah, let me share my screen. And friends, I'm using Google or as my French friend calls it, giggle, said, oh, I'm going to giggle that information. So we're going to look at giggle. Yes, it is pretty funny. And the reason I'm using Google is because I want to see what others are saying, because that is the largest search engine. So here we go. I just did a quick search here. And I did the search term Norfolk Southern greedy, because that was another phrase that I kept seeing again and again and again, that these railroads and these corporations are so greedy and we need to take them back. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. What do you mean take them back? Did you start them? Do they belong to you? So that's a very interesting kind of left-right paradigm, divisive argument right there. But this was interesting to me. Norfolk Southern, this is just 3 hours ago, gives $3.8 million to East Palestine citizens. And this is the Daily Mail. I don't want to click through because there's a lot of paywalls and so forth. Down here, it says Norfolk Southern is paying $6.5 million. What's interesting is both of these add up to the number 11. And if you've been watching my channel at all, that I am very aware of the symbolism, the numerology, the hidden facts and figures that they embed into these stories so that they can signal to others whether or not this is something to be trusted. It's not the only thing I base my decision on or my conclusion, but it does make an interesting point when I see these numbers. So here we go. The Pennsylvania governor calls out corporate greed and incompetence of the Norfolk Southern over the train derailment. And there are others that have said that. Here's another one. Senator Sherrod Brown, blames corporate greed for Ohio. And I've seen that again and again. So let's do this, friends. I made a whole list of items of things that are just making me raise my eyebrows. And I'm going to start from the beginning. As a reminder, I've got several videos on this already. So I've already gone into great detail onto some of this. But if you're new to the channel, I've been exposing evil and the evildoers for the last 3 years, ever since this hogwash was sloshed all over us. I was one of the first people, to my knowledge, that exposed the fact that no governor can make a law, and at least in California and probably in your state as well, the criteria that they used for these shutdowns was completely flimsy and illegitimate. So that really launched the Healthy American. And over the last several years here, yes, several years, we're starting year 4. My husband, Pastor David, and I have helped so many people keep their jobs without the jab, and have helped people get their medical care and do all sorts of things without the self-suffocation devices, without the nasal assault, and certainly without becoming a human pincushion. And so my goal is to expose evil and to help you develop your critical thinking skills. And I would rather ask questions. I would rather put forth some of these ideas and be proven wrong than to just sit and accept everything the government tells me. I was flabbergasted at the very beginning of all the hogwash 3 years ago when people just, I will suffocate myself. All right. Oh, you want me to stay home from work and not earn any money? Okay. Oh, I should keep my kids out of school. All right. They didn't even bother to ask why. At least I'm asking questions. And maybe the questions are going to have a very legitimate answer. Maybe it's going to lead us to another place. And as one of my Healthy Americans wrote, thank you, Peggy, for helping us connect the clots. Yes, I'll just put it that way. So I'm going to stick with me because I'm going to read to you some of your awesome comments on my previous videos. But let me just summarize some of the things that are making me very skeptical about all of this. All right. In this town of East Palestine, as they call it, and it used to have a different name, and I guess in the 1800s or something, the towns were renamed in that area for biblical names. Why it's East Palestine when it's called Palestine, I'm not sure. But a new fire chief started there in early 2022. So basically exactly a year ago. 6 months into the job, this new fire chief on the scene, and I've seen this in California a lot, where they shuffle the people around and they put somebody in. And I'm not saying that this guy's a puppet. All right. I don't have any evidence of that yet, but I do see that a lot of puppets are put into place by the puppet masters. And then once they serve their purpose, they're swept off the stage, much like we've seen with different governors like Cuomo and a lot of health officers and that kind of thing. They're just sort of pushed aside and the next puppet comes into place. What happened with this puppet, with this fire chief, again, I don't have any evidence of that yet, but what I'm saying is that that this new fire chief, one of the first things he did 6 months into the job is he gave away free, yes, doesn't everybody like something for free, free MyID medical trackers. And I did a whole video on that. We looked at one of their advertisements. We talked about the money and all of that. So I thought that was very interesting. So right away, having that activity, maybe he was just trying to ingratiate himself in with the city. I don't know who paid for those. And I don't know why he had that great idea. And I don't know what his connection is with MyID. I could not even find who owns MyID. If you can find it out about the investors, it is a privately held company. I wouldn't be surprised if Granny Gates has her fingernails into that company as well. I don't have any evidence of that, but help me with that research if you would. All right. The next thing that I think is interesting is that White Noise movie based on the book that was written in 1985. And there was a movie that was released earlier, and then a Netflix movie was released in August of 2022, just about the time when the MyID tracker bracelets were released into, hey, maybe they were using that for the movie, because I read that a lot of the actual residents of that town were extras in the movie. So maybe they got a little training on how to act and how to be on a movie set. I'm just asking and just saying. So let me show you a quick clip. And I'm going to play like 2 seconds of this movie trailer. And I want you to notice two things. All right. I'm not even going to mention them to you. I am just going to cue that up. So let me bring that over, and I will unplug my audio. And I want to see if you caught these two things that I did. All right. Let me share my screen. And the first thing we have is they are all being evacuated. So people are rushing out when they heard of this train derailment. All right. I'm going to actually push this ahead a little bit because I know right where I want to be. And let me know if you saw this movie. Let me know if you saw the trailer. Okay, here we go. Let me make sure. I want to slow it down one tad so that we can really catch what's being said here. I'm going to unplug volume.
Do sheep have lashes? Do sheep have lashes? Asked the
Hey, did everybody catch that? Two things that I caught in that clip. Number one, she's taking off the suffocation device very surreptitiously. You don't see her wearing it, but it's hanging around her ear. Are they trying to normalize that? Are they trying to say that you're supposed to do that? Why isn't anybody else wearing one? So that to me was very curious. Granted, this was filmed or I don't know when it was filmed, but it was released in 2022. So it was filmed prior to that. But it takes place, I think it's in the 1970s. So isn't that interesting that she would be wearing this surgical facial device? And then the second thing she asks, which is so bizarre, do sheep have lashes? All right, has zero to do with anything. Now, perhaps the movie makers thought that juxtaposing a very bizarre question, kids have all kinds of very interesting questions. They're naturally curious. I hope that they keep that curiosity throughout their life. But why in the world would they use that phrase, sheep, and have it associated with the suffocation device? I know there are those of you that have not developed your ability to see those things. And you're going to say, Peggy, you are absolutely ridiculous. It has nothing to do with anything. You're connecting the clots where they don't exist. I say it's done on purpose. Everything in movie making is done on purpose, down to the clothes they're wearing, the angles, what they say, who they cast, the everything, the pacing, the music, the set, it is all done intentionally. So she could have said, why can't elephants fly? She could have said, why is the sky blue? Oh, and I have an answer for you. Yes, because we're under a dome of water, as the Bible says. Why? She could ask any other question, but the question becomes, do sheep have eyelashes, to associate the sheep with the wearing the mask? And then the father looks, because they're in the middle of a disaster, and his expression is to say, how in the world could you be thinking about that? So I thought that was very strange. I catch a lot of things. Let me know in a comment below if you're like me and you're like, oh my gosh, these powers of discernment are sometimes a burden. Because no, I can never take anything at face value. I always dig deeper, and I like it that way. I would much rather dig deeper, be proven wrong, than to just go along with everything blindly. Okay, so here's another thing. All right, many of you mentioned, and I agree with you, that this likely is some sort of a land grab, that land is going to be taken over by eminent domain. There were a lot of interviews going on with people who actually said, oh yes, I'm moving out. And again, I don't even know if these interviews are authentic or staged. The more I watch them as the time goes on, and when I watch them 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, sometimes with the sound off, and sometimes I will only listen to the sound and turn the video off. And you can pick up a lot of things in terms of, do these people sound sincere or not? And are we hearing the same narrative being pushed and pushed? But the fact of the matter is, one way or another, whether this scenario happened exactly as it was presented to us, or whether it was fudged a little bit, or whether the whole thing was orchestrated, or maybe it didn't even happen at all and it's all CGI. I mean, that leads me into the next thing. I have not seen anybody on the ground with their cell phone footage. Why is that? Why is the only thing I've seen are these pictures at a great distance? Well, Peggy, people couldn't get that close. Yes, but somebody could have been in their house with a cell phone, videotaping something, couldn't they? I mean, haven't you been on social media? You see people having all sorts of video tape of all sorts of things, but nothing of this, nothing whatsoever. I find that very, very strange. So the fact is, yes, they will go in for a land grab, and yes, they will try to move the people out. They're moving people out because they want their 15-minute cities. They want people out of the rural areas, and they want them in the pack 'em and stack 'em. They want the control. I also mentioned in a previous video that Intel is in New Albany, which is like 3 hours from East Palestine, but the idea is that they need like 5 million gallons of water a day or an hour or something in order to process these silicon chips. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah. And they're making this new Silicon Valley, which residents and Ohio natives have told me they hate that phrase because, Silicon Valley in California. So the fact is they are going forward, and Intel is seeking millions and millions, if not billions of dollars from you and me, and the money that's printed out of thin air as grants that were a part of this last, Inflation Reduction Act. So print more money to reduce inflation. It's brilliant. Oh my gosh. It's like I used to have monopoly money. The other thing that's very interesting that some of you pointed out is that Granny Gates, everybody's favorite grandma, Granny Gates bought a huge position in Ecolab. So let's take a look at that, shall we? And we'll see what is Ecolab. Let me share my screen. And then I can't wait to read your comments. So here's Ecolab, a trusted partner for millions of customers. It's a global sustainability leader. Oh, we love global sustainability, don't we? That has NWO, New World Disorder, written all over it. It is a leader offering water hygiene and infection prevention. Oh, yes, because, we're all disease ridden. So infection prevention solutions and services that protect people and the resources vital to life. Well, certainly oxygen is not vital to life. Oh, no. That's not important at all. So they have science-based solutions, it says, and data-driven insights and world-class service to advance food safety and maintain safe and clean environments and optimize water and energy use. So Granny here invested heavily. Granny Gates adding to Ecolab position. And here we have it. He has an estimated net worth, it has an estimated net worth of $129 billion as of June. Wow. And he recently, them, bought $32 million more shares in Ecolab. So maybe he knows something we don't, friends. But I thought that was an interesting connection as well, because if they're going to be going in and cleaning up the water And how about them apples? All right. Oops. I think I am back with you here. And the next thing that I want to look at on my list is, so the strange things to summarize: no local footage. The strange report that I shared with you yesterday, where the fellow was standing out in front of these burnt out vehicles that looked like they had been melted on the spot, which I believe came from microwave energy. Some of you don't know what DEW is. It stands for directed energy weapons. You can just Google or Giggle Northrop Grumman and Raytheon and others, and they've had this technology like since the 1940s or something. And now that's what they're doing, I believe, in terms of maybe it's just target practice. Some of you said, well, it looks like the cars were towed over there to that yard. Then why is the debris all over there? It just doesn't make sense to me, and how the person was doing that reporting right there without any protective gear, saying that his eyes were burning, but he got used to the smell. It just all seemed very strange to me. I also noticed that the same people are being interviewed again and again and again. I thought that was interesting. And then, of course, the huge calls for massive government intervention. Now, as I was doing a search of the headlines today, because I like to dig beneath the headlines, one thing that I saw coming up again and again was this phrase of, we need to take our railroads back. We need to take back our railroads out of the greedy hands of the corporate profiteers. Okay, you probably know this, but in case you're going to share this video with someone who's not as up on things as you are, a corporation has a fiduciary responsibility to its shareholders. That means they are responsible for returning dividends and making a profit in that company so that their shareholders will keep investing in that company. I just showed you Ecolabs, right? Bill Gates just invested $32 million. He's going to be getting a return on his investment, ideally, not only because the stock price would rise over time. And of course, the stock market is a roller coaster, and there's probably a lot of shenanigans that go on in that, but I'm just talking about the concepts. And the other concept is that you receive a dividend, meaning you get money, you get a part of the profit. So why in the world would Norfolk Southern want to cut corners and want to be a greedy profiteer when its actions are resulting in damage to its railroad cars? You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense to me. Why would they intentionally damage their asset, their equipment that would then have to be replaced, unless there's something very shady going on there, just like some businesses go up in smoke, the arsons start restaurants on fire, and then they get their insurance money. So that possibly could be at play here. But the general concept of corporations being greedy, let's look at that more carefully. All right. Yes, they need to make a profit. And yes, there are some that do produce shoddy products, but they will not be in business. It's not sustainable. They may go bankrupt, and they may not have to pay off their creditors and their debtors and all of that. And so that's one way, like Solyndra. Does that ring a bell for anybody back in the big zero era? Yes, prior to the Trump years, the big zero that was in office. Yeah. Giving millions, if I have to see how much it was, millions and millions and millions of dollars to Solyndra for green energy. Not one project was ever created. Not one blueprint was formed. Nothing other than lining the pockets of people. And then that went bankrupt. So if you want to talk about the greedy profiteers, how about these shell, fake, phony, fraudulent companies that are set up in order to receive your money and my money, right? I get about 50 cents of every dollar that I earn, and the rest goes to the government, so that they can send it off to the USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development. I'm going to be doing a story on that for you soon. $1 billion going to other countries out of my hard-earned money that the government steals from me. You want to talk about greedy profiteers? It's the government, and they're not even making any products. So let's dig deeper and not just parrot these phrases of the greedy corporate profiteers. If you had invested in Norfolk Southern, you'd be making money, all right? And they have a responsibility to return these dividends to the shareholders. Now, is every corporation on the up and up? No, there are greedy people. There are greedy poor people. There are greedy rich people. There are greedy teachers. There are greedy doctors. There are greedy children. It's not related and restricted only to corporations. Let's stop demonizing them. Because what's the other option? When the person says, we need to take our railroads back, or are you going to run it? Oh, you mean the government's going to run it? Oh, you want a nationalization of our transportation. Friends, I think this is the bottom line of all these train wrecks that we've been seeing lately. Now, maybe these maybe these railroads are in on it, just like Kaiser was in on the nationalization of our healthcare system. All right. I had Kaiser years and years and years and years ago when they actually cared about people. And, you know, if I had just had, I don't know, sprained an ankle or something like that, of course, I never went in the medical mainstream merry-go-round where I was on medicine or anything like that. But I did have a broken foot once. But I'm telling you, I thought to myself, why doesn't the government just give everybody a $5,000 debit card if they want to nationalize the medicine? And they can take that $5,000, which was my annual fee for Kaiser. And I had like a $25 visit and a zero deductible. And then after the big zero made his unaffordable care, instead of $300 a month, it went up to $1,500 a month. And there was going to be a $5,000 deductible. And I don't even know what the doctor visits were. Oh yeah, okay, that's really affordable. So I don't even do healthcare. I do Christian Health Share Ministry. The link is for you below, SamaritanMinistries.org. I will not participate in any of that. But Kaiser and Blue Cross and Blue Shield and all of the others were in on that. It's basically the federalization of healthcare because everything's exactly the same. The gold, the platinum, and blah, blah, blah. That's what they're going to be doing with transportation. And what's the bottom line of that? So maybe those companies are in on it. Maybe they're going to be getting massive government infusion. And I also read that there is I'm going to have to do a separate video for you on this one, friends. Oh, let me take you over. Actually, I've got a link for you right here. I told you we're going to talk about a ton of stuff. How about this? Let's take a look at this, shall we? How do you like them apples? Biden-Harris administration. Seriously, they're in the White House? There must be a mistake. Announces availability of $100 million through the Inflation Reduction Act for environmental justice grants. Oh yes, because the environment is not very just. Has to all be equitable. Here we go. The Environmental Protection Agency announced the availability of approximately $100 million for projects that advance environmental justice in underserved and overburdened communities across the country. Well, guess who's going to be applying for that? Norfolk Southern, or maybe there will be some groups in East Palestine. Maybe they were persuaded to go along with all of this narrative so that they could get their hands on some of this $100 million. It will all come out in the wash, or maybe it won't, friends. But I'm just saying these are a lot of things that are lining up. So here's what bothers me the most. This is the bottom line for me in all of this. All right. 3 possibilities. Number 1, it happened exactly as presented. There was a derailment. There was a previous fire on the tracks. The vinyl chloride was released, even though the CDC downgraded its severity and all of that. And there was a toxic cloud that's going all over the country, even though we have no eyewitness footage of that. Let's just say that it happened exactly as it did. All right, that's one possibility. It's likely that there still will be all of the ancillary, all of the side effects that are happening here, as I mentioned, with government grabs and other things. The second thing that could happen is that it was staged, that it actually was orchestrated. And that is a possibility. I'm not saying it happened, but you have to admit it is a possibility. With the CGI, with the holograms, it can be a giant distraction so we don't see what's going on in the rest of the world. The headlines are all about this. And if they're saying that there's a toxic cloud that's going over and people suddenly are having cancer and liver cancer and difficulty breathing and heart attacks and strokes, it could never be from the fact that they're human pincushions. Oh, no, 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 no. It could never at all be related to the cooties cocktail. It definitely is related to the toxic cloud. You see how that works. So it could have been orchestrated. Or the third possibility is it didn't even happen. I know many of you are going to say, Peggy, that is so far-fetched. How could everybody be in on it? Everybody doesn't have to be in on it, only a select few. And I will also say that money talks. Now, I want to leave you with one other thing, and then I'm going to take a look at your comments. So this came to mind, and I saw this fellow. Well, I'm not sure if it's a fellow. I was just going by the name, but let me give you a little background. So you lovely, healthy Americans are always sending me links to videos and articles and so forth. And I saw an article on the Children's Health Defense website, and it was talking again about how some people are calling for, we the people to take the railroads back. I still don't understand what that means. And from the greedy profiteers. So this was one of the people in the article that was on the Children's Health Defense. They just embedded this tweet and this Twitter tweet. So here we go. I'm going to take you right on over there. And a couple of interesting things about this situation too. So I looked at this and I did a little searching. So Ross Gruters, this is the same person, was running for Pleasant Hill City Council in Iowa. But here's what's interesting. I started reading the biography. Ross was born in Iowa and raised on Air Force bases across the country and overseas. Moving back to Iowa after high school, they met their spouse. Anyway, that's a sidetrack. But what I am talking about is this Ross has been in the news here. Teamsters, Railroad Workers United. And anyway, I just thought that, I don't need to see that image. I just thought that was a very interesting aspect to this as well. All right, let's see what you have to say, friends. And then I'm going to tell you what you have to say, because you gave me so many awesome comments. And I actually am going to share these with you because I think they're so cool. All right. In fact, let me do that. I'm going to share my screen and we will take a look at some of your comments that I pulled off of the last few videos. So here it is. Kevin was the one who told me the EPA recently announced $100 million in environmental justice grants. The 2023 EPA budget is over 11 billion. There's that 11 again. The applications are due April 2023, and a lot of the players showed up in East Palestine. So very interesting. Here's another one. Problem, reaction, solution. Every time they want people to beg for the solution. They want the government to keep them safe. And here's one. Anne says, I was examining a photo of the derailment after seeing, well, actually, no, friends, I know it's so small you can't even read it. So let me just read it for you. I was examining a photo of the derailment after seeing some of the videos of people saying the tracks are right behind their house. And this boy at the age of 12 took video of the cleanup from his back door as if it was just outside his backyard. Why were none of the houses damaged? And why were none of the people killed? She wondered. She said, I look at the photo, does not show any houses nearby, just businesses with big yards. I could not make out any train tracks, and it most certainly was not an intersection. She said another interesting fact is that they have a Freemason lodge in that small, poor town, and we know all about, I'll just call them the bricklayers. Yes, when you see people and their images and their logos are like in front of the bricks again and again and again, it's not the end all be all, but it does raise a red flag for me. All right, why would they put a lodge in that of all places? She said, I looked at another picture I found and there are train tracks, but there's no intersection and I did not see any stream or creek nearby. Now, I'm not saying that they staged all of that, but it would be pretty easy to just put some oil and then say, oh, look at this oil. Just saying, just saying. That's how my mind works, friends. Okay. Then somebody said about the other video, the on the ground reporter drove right through the crash site, but didn't film it. Yeah, isn't that strange? I wonder why. Someone else says, you're right, Peggy, that other show, that other channel could be controlled, intelligence controlled. Discernment and critical thinking is a difficult task. This is why I watch you, because you think things through better than most. Thank you so much. And then somebody told me that just yesterday, there was another derailment in Nebraska, 31 train cars. Now, 31 is, if you flip that around, is 13. And then there were 13 people that were injured in the other factory explosion in Ohio. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I just think these numbers are very, very interesting because that is some of their code words. Let's take a look at your comments here as we wrap up. So I love my Healthy Americans, and welcome to all of the new subscribers. We do these live streams Monday through Friday. Sometimes I do a pre-recorded, but it airs for you as a premiere live stream, so you can still comment in the chat together. And I appreciate Valerie and Rhonda as my moderators here. And we have our get together so that we can hash these things out. Listen, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't have the answers, but I have the questions. And I believe that having the questions can be more important than having the answers, because they can fiddle around and switch their answers. But if you keep digging and you keep asking questions, and I want to challenge everybody to go back and look at those interviews and watch them again, watch them with the sound off. See if you notice any strange patterns of people. Do you see the same people again and again? And then maybe turn the video off and just listen to the audio. And are you hearing the same thing again and again? Or watch the two together. Do you see the duper's delight, where the person is almost trying to remember what they wanted to say? Maybe they're reading a script, or they were coached in how to do that. If you find anything about advertisements for the crisis actors, let me know. And send me any of that footage where you find some of these interviews kind of strange. Now, the point that I'm really making, and the reason why I'm spending a few days on this, is because it is all an exercise in critical thinking. It is all an exercise for me in discerning whether or not I'm actually even going to believe the headlines. Some of you may say, and rightly so, Peggy, it is such a waste of time. Why do you even care what's going on in Ohio or Nebraska? And in my state of California, there are other railroad cars on the tracks that are just sitting there, also in the agricultural valley, and I will be looking into that more deeply as well. So I am not a person that lives my life according to the headlines, but I do want to stay informed and apprised in terms of what's going on. And for me, it is an intellectual exercise so that I can have these conversations with others. And my goal in all of this is to help wake people up. I want to expose the evildoers, the bad guys, the hogwashers, the puppet masters. And then I also want to expose the fakes, frauds, and phonies that have infiltrated the freedom movement. Because friends, you know, there are people like you and me that knew from the beginning, like all of this cootie stuff was hogwash from day one, and we didn't fall for it, and we stood up against it. Then there are others that were fearful at the beginning, and then they got their wits about them and they're like, hey, things aren't adding up, and then they're on board. That's great. And then of course, there are people that believe what the government says, hook, line, and sinker. We'll just leave them aside. And then there are those that really bother me. There are those that know it's wrong, but they go along with it anyway. I want to focus on that group and the group that, you know, came along a little bit later than others, because here's what's going to happen. There are people like me that are and you that really are discerning, and we're critical thinkers, and we ask all these questions and we don't go along with any of it. And then there are others in the second category that are like, well, why would the government lie to us? That doesn't make sense. Well, they fall into that next bucket. And trust me, there are a lot of freedom fighters that are ready to welcome them with open arms and then whisper into their ear and shout into the headlines their narrative, like more government, safer cooties cocktails. If only they could make these safer, if they could not use the aborted fetal cells, then that would be better. And then they have everybody in that bucket and they tell them what they want to say. And then those that kind of escape out of that bucket, there's even another bucket where all the doctors are saying, we have the cure for cooties. And even though I manufactured the cooties cocktail, I'm against it now. And even though I took it myself, I'm not going to do that again. And then you start to believe them and say, well, I can trust them if they created them and they're doctors. You see what I'm saying? They are trying to go after you step after step after step. Just don't go into those buckets. You can think for yourself. I know you can. And that's why I love having you on board. And I really can't wait to dig into more of your comments so that I can share more of these. Okay, here's a great one. Don't Step in the Grease says that train sitting on the California tracks looks like intimidation. So maybe that is to create fear. What is fear? It is a way of hijacking your thinking mind. That's why after the dust settles and you go back and watch some of those videos, after the fear has dissipated, after the adrenaline and the cortisol, so that your thinking brain can function more readily. And that's why these images, it's basically like terrorism, where you're constantly, oh my gosh, is there going to be another bomb, another explosion? And I didn't get to tell you the bottom line. The bottom line in all of this is the government wants to restrict your movement. So if the government overtakes these railroads and takes over the airlines and takes over the buses and everything else, then they're going to be able to restrict where you can go. And you'll say, well, yes, there's going to be regulations and it'll be safe. Why is it safe? Just because the government's taking care of it. I would think they're the last people that I would trust. But the bottom line in all of this is to restrict your movement, to make you afraid to ride on a train, to fly in a plane. I think all of these stories of, oh, there's only going to be one pilot in the cockpit. Seriously? I doubt that. And I doubt that that pilot or anybody on that plane would even get on that plane when we're talking about that. So yes, I think there is a lot of fear mongering. You know, they're mongering the fear, they're mongerers, and there is a lot of flu mongering, of course, and they are just fear peddlers. And there are plenty of people that I don't watch, so-called presenters in, you know, alternative media, and all they do is put you in the spin cycle. How many times did I hear that the world was coming to an end and that we were not going to have any food in the grocery stores and so forth? Now, I'm a prepper, so don't get me wrong. I am level-headed about all of that, but I do not put you in the spin cycle. I'm not about the spin. I'm all about the solution. So keep digging deeper, get yourself prepared, take a break from the headlines. I've got a video that got so many good comments because you really appreciated it. And it was called, actually, I put it on my other channel called Living Swell, and it's called Informed or Obsessed. So take a look at that. And it's where I encourage you to take a break from the headlines and to also consider why so many people live in fear, and have some compassion for others, have some compassion for yourself. And I love you guys are putting in the comments all of the grifters. I don't know a lot of these people, and I don't really want to poke fingers or anything like that, point fingers. But what I do want is to help you just discern what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and what other people are doing as well. It actually makes me feel empowered. And I think that is one of the best actions that we can take. We're educated, we're empowered, we're connected, and that is how we overcome the hogwashers. And as I like to say, we outwit the nitwits. Okay, friends, signing off for now. I will be back with you tomorrow. I want to talk about the who, what, where, when, why, and how, because it's another whole spin, friends. They're putting you into a frenzy. Don't fall for the headlines. I tore this apart last summer. I did 2 videos that YouTube did not like at all. They took them down and I broke it down for you. Listen, I'll give you the punchline right now. Basically, the United States already follows what the WHO says. So that's no news at all. The second thing is no other country or organization or international group has any authority to take your sovereignty away, period. All right, there's the punchline. We'll dig into it tomorrow. All right, see you soon, everybody. Hey, get on my free Substack. If you're on my Substack, you are going to get all of these. Well, you'll get 2, maybe 1 or 2 articles a week that are deep dives in a written format where I type out my thoughts about all of this. It's easy to share for people who don't want to sit through a video. They can analyze it, read it, look at it. It's absolutely free. And then many of you lovely, healthy Americans actually subscribed to it. You get the same content, but that is how you help support my work. Anybody that has subscribed to Substack, anybody that has sent in a donation, anybody that has been on Peggy Hall TV as a subscriber, you are all invited this Saturday to my monthly Q&A live stream webinar. Pastor David joins me, and we are going to be talking about critical thinking and logical fallacies and all of that. And it's absolutely free, but you have to be a donor or a subscriber. And if you're not sure about that, email support@thehealthyamerican.org, and my lovely assistant will get you all set up. So hope to see you then. That's Saturday at 4 p.m. Pacific. All right, friends, signing off for now. See you in